This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Webinars. Man, webinars are awesome, except when you go to set up a webinar, specifically an Evergreen webinar. Oh my God. Good luck. You're screwed. Well, actually, you're not screwed because my next guest, the amazing and fantastic Melissa Kwan of eWebinar.com, is here to save your life, or at least to save your webinars. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David.
So let's talk about webinar automation technology. You obviously saw a gap in the marketplace. You saw all kinds of crazy complexity and nonsense. And also, frankly, you saw a lot of competition. So not only are you really smart, but you're really brave for taking on all these other platforms that really don't cut it. What did you see out there in the Evergreen webinar world that was missing, funky, broken, and sad? And then let's talk about how we're on our way to fixing it.
I mean, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head with that introduction, right? There are things that are out there for people that are listening and maybe they've seen Evergreen webinar software or automated webinar software, but what's out there just didn't cut it. It's not great software. And not all software is built the same way. So I actually live the life of hosting live webinars every single day to onboard and train my customers in my previous tech company. Always had a small team. So I was the person that was drowning in these live webinars. But no matter how many I did, it was just simply not enough, because when you have new users coming in every day, you need them to activate as soon as possible. And you've just closed an enterprise client. So you need them to be happy. And everyone wants you, not anyone else, but you to do a kickoff for them. And when you're serving customers around the world, I mean, even nationally, right? You're in different time zones. So how can you possibly deliver enough onboarding and training to activate your customers, right? So I was living that life of having my business growth tied to my availability. And eventually in that life, we relied on our customers to do what I should have been doing for them, which is we just train their trainers and expect that they would train their employees or their team members. But that isn't a way to be competitive, right, with people that are competing in your space. So I actually did a few years ago look for automated webinar software that would deliver the perfect video as a webinar. But everything that I saw and everything that I tried was poorly built. It was uninspiring. And it just really wasn't designed in a way that I could really align my brand to. So eWebinar is a product that I always wished existed when I was growing my previous tech company. Something that wasn't built specifically to deceive consumers, because that's not what this is for, right? But something that is really for enterprises, legitimate companies of any size, to automate everything that they can so they can free themselves from the computer and be able to run their life or live their life and run their business without being there 24/7. So that was really the gap. Is sure, there's stuff that's out there, but it is just not good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and let's talk. I want to pick up on what you just said about these other webinar platforms being built on deception. It may have even been initially kind of innocent deception because they recorded a live thing. And so what you hear on the video and the audio is a recording of a live event. But then the way they frame that Evergreen on-demand webinar is, oh, it's live. It's starting in 17 minutes. And make sure to put this in the chat and put that in the chat. And the chat is either all completely fake, or it's bots, or it's pre-scripted, preloaded, et cetera, et cetera.
But that's the problem, right?
Yes.
The video is not the problem. Like, people know when they're watching a replay. Yeah. The problem is the fake conversation, fake urgency, fake sales counter, fake timers that go nowhere. That's the problem. That's the deception. The deception is not hosting a replay and repurposing it. A lot of our customers will host their replays on eWebinar just to make it more engaging.
Right.
But it actually, the other problem that we wanted to solve, the other gap that we wanted to solve was we wanted to deliver an experience that is elevated above live webinars that it actually doesn't matter if you tell your audience that it's recorded. A lot of our customers tell people that it's recorded. How can your customers around the world expect you to be delivering what they need all the time? Right. It's just not possible, which is why I like to think of eWebinar as, the Netflix of webinars, where you can get it anytime you want.
Yes. But also, let's talk about this kind of hybrid live model, which I think is brilliant. And every other platform I've looked at, and I've looked at most of them, they either don't implement this at all, or they implement it in an incredibly clunky, awkward, bizarre kind of way. So talk a little bit about the chat, talk a little bit about what we can drop into a webinar experience to make it more interactive, more engaging, more compelling. Give us the whole story about that interactive component of an evergreen asset.
Yeah, so that's really unique to our company, right? It's really unique to eWebinar. And again, this was really a product that I wish existed. I had been dreaming about this for 5 years. And when my previous company was sold 2 years ago, this is the kind of product I was looking for. And I always thought it existed, but I just couldn't find it. How is it possible that all these huge companies, Zoom, GoToWebinar, and whatnot, are solving the webinar space, but no one's paying any attention to the real problem of needing to automate that? Because we know webinars work. It's no longer a question. That's why we do them. It's the only way to get to anyone in the world, anytime, the only way to really broadcast, whether it's a sales pitch, whether it's a training on onboarding. But the biggest problem with webinars is someone has to be there to host them. And absolutely, they have their place. But where they don't have their place is where things are repetitive. If you have a book launch, a product launch, a software launch that is timely, absolutely, you should do that live webinar and get people excited and be able to answer questions in real time. But there are so many webinars that are just repeated over and over again, whether it's every day or every second week, right? So the one feature that I really thought was missing from anything else, minus the design and all that stuff, right? The one feature that was missing for people to truly run their business without being there is a proper live chat system that's almost like a Zendesk or an intercom. And I'm not talking a fake chat box that goes to an email, which is what most of them have. But they say they have live chat. If you read their feature list, they say they have it, and you go in the platform and you're like, where is it? Or there's actually another side to people trying to do what they call evergreen webinars, like the Zooms or those type of companies have an automated feature, but it's really like a video replay hosted on a landing page that's gated, or it's got some automation around it. So it plays at a certain time, but it doesn't have the scheduling and it doesn't have the chat feature. So some people actually have a live chat, but you have to be there when your automated webinar is running to answer the chat. Otherwise, it goes into outer space. So the definition of automation is to be able to complete a task without actually being there. So if you are a hybrid platform, say a lot of live first platforms have an automated feature, especially the startup-y ones. But if you have to be there to answer the chat when your automated session is running, that's not automation. That just means that your system plays the video automatically. So I always envisioned an automated webinar system with a live chat that's properly done, which means if you are there and you want to hop in real time, you can. But if you want to respond, or if you respond when the attendee is already offline, say when you wake up in the morning, you've already done 5 workshops. And when you respond, then they get your response on email, which means every single question is always answered, even when you're not there, which actually sounds kind of simple because this type of chat system exists, right? Every time we land on a website, there's a little chat bubble. That's how those chat bubbles work. They just don't exist in webinar platforms, whether it's live or automated. In live webinars, it's even worse. People ask you a lot of questions. The webinar ends, you drop off, and everything's deleted. You'd have to be so intentional about finding out who that person is, looking up the email in order to go and answer them.
Right.
And then none of the evergreen webinar software has remotely even the same chat system. And the reason for that is it's really hard to build. So it takes a proper company that is technology focused, not marketing focused. Because I think when I was doing a lot of research on these existing softwares, a lot of them are started by marketers, not so much technologists, right? Not so much like real like startup founders. And that's okay. I think that's just where it started some years ago. And they probably outsource some developers and piece the software together, which it kind of feels like that, to be honest.
Yes.
But to now go back, like say you've been building this for 10 years, right? To now go back and rebuild these kind of systems, I mean, it's too big of an investment for a lot of people. It just doesn't make sense.
Hey, good looking. Are you currently getting paid to speak? Would you like to ramp that up? We can help. Book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team at doitmarketing.com/call, and let's see what we might do together. The call is free, but the results may be priceless.
The other thing that I love is it's not just the live chat, but the timed interactions. So when you're talking about a concept, and especially this is true in a marketing or a sales webinar, you're talking about a concept. This person may have just stumbled across the webinar or clicked on an ad or come to your website, and they're 5 minutes and 17 seconds into your webinar. And you say, by the way, we have some more information in this PDF. I'm dropping it into the chat right now. So now they're watching your webinar. They've only had 5 minutes and 17 seconds, but now there's this credibility piece that gets dropped into the chat. And then at 10 minutes and 34 seconds, it's so funny. We just wrote a blog about this that has some useful templates for you. I'm dropping a link to the blog in the chat right now. Now they get a second credibility piece outside of the webinar. People love multitasking. And what I love about eWebinar is you almost don't let them multitask, go back to Facebook, go back to their email. They're now multitasking on your stuff. They're reading your PDF. They're going to your blog as they're watching your webinar.
I mean, you make a really good point. So it brings me back to when we were conceptualizing this. And for those of you listening, what Dave is talking about is we've got an interactivity component where you can program things like not just questions and polls, which most people have, but feedback, downloads, tips, right? Anything you want to draw attention to, request a contact. So would you like to be contacted? Fill in this form that's coming up. Like think about how hot that lead is when they're pre-educated and they fill in that form, special offers, obviously, and we're always constantly innovating on the different interactions that we can put in. But the reason actually for this is yet another thing that I was hoping for before I even built eWebinar was, like you had mentioned, people love to multitask. I multitask. I'm guilty of that, especially nowadays, right? And also, webinars are kind of boring, right? A lot of them are kind of boring because not everyone is a great speaker. And that's actually the foundation of that problem is not everyone's a really engaging speaker. So how do we keep people engaged? Like if the success of your webinar is how engaged people are from beginning to end, let's say watch time, then we need to give them something to do. So eWebinar, actually, what we did was we actually didn't take inspiration from any of the other webinar companies. What we did when we were doing research on design was we went and looked at Netflix, Apple TV, the Disney app, Twitch. Like we actually looked at how people were consuming video content today. We took those elements and we put it into the presentation experience. Because what is actually really bizarre to me is when you look at your phone, your computer, and everything that you guide your life with, it's beautiful, consumer friendly, colorful, energetic, fun. And then the moment you launch into a Zoom, it's immediately corporate. It's like you're in a boardroom. But why is that? I'm a consumer. You're a consumer. Don't I want my business content to be also consumer friendly? Don't I want to hit a thumbs up for my business content? So we put a little thumbs up so people could give you some encouragement. And we map those out on a heat map so you can see what people liked, where they drop off. You can go back and see where they drop off and see maybe I can better my presentation next time. So all of this interactivity is not just to keep people on the page. It's also used, if you use it intentionally, for you to understand your customer, get their feedback, understand your marketing channels. Where did you hear about us? Where are you joining me from? What is the next feature that you would want to see? right? What did you think about my talk? Just a pulse check. Are you learning anything new? So these are the things that, it just gives people something to do. And we're hearing watch times of over 90% for a lot of our customers if they just drop something in every 3 to 4 minutes, because there's something to do. And to your point, people don't really want to be distracted. And as you get better and better at this, you can even tee that up in your video recording, right? Like, so what I love to say is, by the way, throughout this presentation, you're going to see things like questions, polls, and tips pop up that will allow me to engage with you and share resources. So make sure you look out for those. So now you're teeing it up. And to your point about saying, hey, I've got a great resource, I'm going to drop this right here. Just click on that and you can revisit it later. I really like to think about this as like the interactive television that was never built. Right? Remember when the internet became a thing and people were like, oh yeah, this is interactive TV, but no one could really make it work. I think they tried to build apps that went with your TV show and would maybe send you things that you would, shop with, but it never really took off. But eWebinar is kind of like the interactive TV that really wasn't cracked. So now you're not just watching this video, you're giving feedback and you're getting more resources and learning more about your host and their company at the same time.
Yeah, really, really important. Melissa, let's talk about sort of the classic 5 webinar challenges. The classic 5 webinar challenges is we got to get them to sign up. We got to get them to show up. We got to get them to stay till the end, which you just brilliantly talked about. So we can kind of gloss over that one, check that box already. Get them to take the call to action, whether that's book a full demo with our team, book an appointment, book a strategy session, click here to buy my thing, and then, ultimately close the sale and increase sales if we're doing a sales or a marketing webinar. Between sign up, show up, stick around till the end, call to action, ultimately a sale, because you've done some great thinking about this. What are some of the mechanisms and some of the design elements that help with at least some of those phases of a complete webinar experience?
So this is a thing that I try to tell people all the time, right? Just because it's a video, if you put a video on YouTube versus putting it in eWebinar, just because it's the same video does not mean it's the same for the person consuming that content, right? And actually, I have videos on both. I have the same video on YouTube and I have it on eWebinar as well, because in this day and age, you actually can't predict where people want to consume your content. You can only be there when they're there. So don't think that, oh, I already have this in one place. What's the difference? But also the mindset of somebody joining a webinar, it's an event. It's something that I know I register for, and I know I'm going to get a calendar invite and I'm going to get some reminders and I'm going to go attend it. The mindset of someone going to a Wistia or YouTube is, oh, let's just see what this is. 2 minutes. I'll get back to it later. I mean, how many get back to it laters do we have in our inbox? It's the same thing as people signing up for a replay and never actually revisiting it. We're all guilty of that. We just want the resource. Right. So I think understanding that distinction is really important. But also, because of that mindset, you're now attracting a different type of customer or a different type of lead. People that are willing to share their contact with you, their email with you in order to join something that you're going to share. So that's a really big distinction. But also, there's a lot of people that say, oh, I already do webinars. I do it like once every 2 weeks. But is that enough? Because the golden hour to host a webinar is between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. 11 a.m. in New York is not the same thing as 11 a.m. in Singapore. So when your 11 a.m. is not the same as mine, how can I make you show up? And it's what I mentioned in the beginning is if you are only doing one session every 2 weeks at a fixed time, you are relying your entire business growth on your own availability. And that's just not a scalable business. That's not good for anybody, right? So one of the ways that you get people to show up is actually to make your webinar as accessible as possible. So the flexible scheduling is so important. So within eWebinar and other automated webinar software as well has features like you can schedule this to happen at the attendee's time zone, which means if I schedule this at 10 a.m. every day, it's 10 a.m. no matter where I am in the world. on your registration page, I'm seeing 10 a.m. And again, yes, it's the same video, but it is the psychology of someone saying, I am free tomorrow, 10 a.m. And then there's another feature called just in time, which means there's always a session happening every 5, 15, or 30 minutes. So again, making it so accessible that people can sign up for this at their moment of intent when they find it. And frankly, David, I was dubious about this feature when we built it. Because I was like, why would anyone join a webinar within 5 minutes of them seeing it? Don't they have other things to do? But I've been running my own demo now for 9 months. And the data tells me I have almost 1,000 people that have joined my webinar in the past 9 months. It's a demo webinar. It's on our website. 75% of people have joined using a just in time. That was completely unexpected. So it turns out people do want to join things right away because they're like, oh, this is only 15 minutes and I have free time now.
Now, when you say just in time, because I know that eWebinar has the just in time with the intervals that you set, and it also says, hey, watch the previously recorded replay. It's the same video, but you're saying that the quote unquote just in time that might be coming up 3 minutes from now, that gets more engagement than the watch the replay from before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And the difference between a replay and we'll say a scheduled session, scheduled as either in the future or in a few minutes, is for the replay, you can play and pause and fast forward. So again, that psychology is also different, right? Someone who registers for a replay might just say, oh, I just want the resource and I'll get back to it later. I'm actually not sure if they do, but people that register for a scheduled session, they're sitting there. My watch time for my demo is over 90%, but it's also really short. So one of the other tricks that I like to do is I tell people on the registration page how long it is.
15-minute webinar.
So they have an expectation, do I want to commit this time or not? And to your earlier point about not deceiving consumers, I'm not lying that this is a recording. It's 15 minutes, it's 30 minutes, it's 35 minutes. And people are fine with that because I'm now giving them a choice. Right. I think what's the future of content, right? Not only is it I want it when I want it, it is so consumer driven. You can't tell them what to do. And I always think about you as your customer, right? It's so strange that, in sales, especially in technology sales, you go to a website and you request for a demo and you have to jump through hoops. You have to fill in a form. Someone gets back to you with a calendar link. And it's kind of annoying because now you have to find a time, but maybe you're not that person that's even worth a one-on-one demo, but they still forced you to go jump through all those hoops. Those days will soon be over. They're not over yet, but there's a lot of gating in technology sales. 87% of consumers would rather do their own research in their buyer's journey. 57% of people make a purchase without even talking to a salesperson. And everyone that's listening, when they're buying, they're like, yeah, of course I want that. But for some reason, when they're selling, they're like, oh, I want to gain everything. So there's a real disconnect, right? In B2B buying. So the other thing that we've really focused on is creating a beautiful landing page, a beautiful registration page. If you go to, Zoom's a good example. I keep using that because everyone knows what it looks like and everyone knows what it is, but their registration page is atrocious. There's barely any customization. Your logo is barely in the right place. The font is horrible, but it works. And fine, maybe that's not their strength. That's not what they're focused on because they actually do have really good live streaming quality. But what we wanted to do was we wanted people to be able to come into eWebinar and have an end-to-end experience, which means creating the webinar, have all of your notifications and your registration page without going elsewhere. Of course, some people are marketers and they have their own landing pages and they can do that because we have a number of widgets that you can install. But if you don't, because a lot of people don't have that extra resource, they don't have to go anywhere and can feel like I have a beautiful registration page that I can't wait to show off. So within eWebinar, not only do we have a beautiful registration page, you can add and remove sections that are pre-designed without any code. We automatically detect your logo color. All of the colors are pre-chosen for you. So one of the other things I wanted to solve when I was designing this is I've tried everything out there, everything under the sun, but the learning curve is really steep. So we wanted people to come into eWebinar and be able to publish their webinar within minutes. So everything has defaults. Every notification is pre-written. Chat messages pre-written. The registration page is pre-designed. The colors are pre-chosen based on your corporate color. So we want to have as many defaults for you as possible. And of course, you can customize if you want to. But if you're coming to this platform, you just want to get it going. You just want to load a video in there and see what it looks like. And people can, if they want to, do it in a few minutes. The other thing that people can use to get more people to show up is get visibility for your webinar, right? I'm actually surprised that a lot of people say, well, okay, well, I've done this and I've put it on my website, but no one's joining. But there's so many other things that within the platform that you can take advantage of. So we've got a pop-up widget, for example. So, when you land on a website, there's a little chat bubble that pops up. We've created a little webinar pop-up that you can install on any website, any landing page that drives people to your webinar. So it's not just a menu on your menu bar. It puts it right in front of their face. You've got different buttons that you can install. We've got a card, like a full-on webinar card that you can install on your blog that calls out the webinar. Everything is, again, pre-designed, copy and paste. But also, you should think about having your webinars in the footer of your emails, right? If it's an introduction to your course, maybe it's a free workshop, that you're offering. You should have it in all of your onboarding emails, all of your intranet, your support. Like, people should be able to get to your webinar anywhere that they are on all of your resource. And then you should have one page that hosts all of your webinars. And we have that as well pre-done for you. But these are just some of the things that we have in our platform that helps drive more attendance. But as for closing the sale, a lot of that also is kind of dependent on you and your presentation structure. Like, we are just the software. So we help deliver your pitch, right? We help deliver your content, but you have to, I guess, practice makes perfect, right? You have to learn the perfect presentation structure for you to get to your own close. We give you the tools to do that. And the other tool we give you to do that is just, you can add as many follow-up emails as you want. I know some people might have, their own CRM or their sales automation software that we can integrate with. But if you don't, then you can add as many follow-up emails as you want, branded to you, your logo, and it will be sent out from our platform.
Totally fantastic. I want to go back to something that you said a few minutes ago, which may be an important distinction, but it's also a little bit of a pet peeve. When you go in, and if it's a just-in-time eWebinar, it is just as if you were watching it for real. So there's no player bar. There's no way to fast forward or rewind. Whereas if you choose the replay, quote unquote, then there is the player bar and controls. Have you noticed any difference in conversion or calls to action if there is the player bar versus if there is not the player bar?
I mean, I don't have an apples to apples comparison because over 80% of people, at least for my demo, join the scheduled session or the just in time. Like, only 12% of people actually register for the replay. So it's not even an apples to apples comparison. It's really hard to compare.
Yeah. And you said that the completion rate, even without the player bar, because it's a 15-minute webinar, is 90% plus.
Yeah. Because
Very
you know why?
impressive.
It's the psychology, though, of people needing to commit. It's the same thing as, why don't I complete something on YouTube, or why do I watch it at 2 times instead of just the normal speed?
Right.
Or because I'm trying to rush through it. I'm playing with my phone. I'm talking to someone else. I'm on another tab, and I think I'm going to go back to it. It's just the psychology of consuming that video.
Very, very interesting. Well, I want to ask you a couple of final questions as we wrap up. Final question number 1 is, what is next? What are you excited about coming up in eWebinar? What are some new innovations or some new little secret previews, if you have any to share?
Yeah. So we just rolled out a feature that I'm excited about. No one's done this before. We haven't even announced it yet, but it's there. A lot of times things are there and we don't talk about it, see what happens. And in the same context as, how do we come up with new ways to deliver content to people and not force them to fit how we think they should consume it? So one of the things that people have asked for in the past is, how do I get someone to watch my webinar without registering? Because I think people are thinking, well, like, if I don't gate my content, then maybe more people will go to it. But one of the greatest things about webinars is that it's gated, right? Because then you get the lead capture. But we asked ourselves, what if there's a way to allow someone to watch the webinar, but only share their contact if they want to? So what if you see so much value from this pitch or from this training or from this workshop that I now actually want to share it with you, right? So what we designed and what we pushed out is something called the ungated replay. So what this is it's a universal link. Anyone can watch this. So maybe you can deliver your workshop on it. And it doesn't capture their lead until they send you a chat message. They can still interact, click on your resources. They can still get all that stuff. But the moment they ask a question, it'll say, great, thanks for your message. What's your email so I can get back to you? And the system automatically does that. And then it says, thanks for your email. What's your name? And then it creates a record in our system. So you can imagine how much hotter that lead is when they've actually watched half of your content and they actually want to get in touch and they're voluntarily giving you that contact information. So that's actually something where I'm very excited about because no one's actually done this. So it's like YouTube on steroids. It is a replay, so people can play and pause, but we don't actually go ahead and capture that until they want to engage. And that's a completely different way of accessing video content, not even just webinar content.
What a great episode. Wowza. Tell you what, if you want to ramp up your revenue as an expert who speaks professionally, you should really check out our free online training at doitmarketing.com/webinar.
Well, I've got two final questions for you. The final question is, how can folks get connected and stay connected to all the latest and greatest eWebinar updates? And Melissa, to you and what your fabulous team is up to. Second to last question, though, zooming out 50,000 feet, if we were to have one sort of central takeaway idea about the state of the Evergreen webinar and what people really need to know, and what the industry and what our buyers, what our prospects are starting to want and need and demand out of any sort of company that is doing education-based marketing with webinars, what would that big overall concept that you want to leave people with, what would that be?
So anyone listening can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. Melissa Kwan, Kwan. I'm always posting updates on there. I'm actually I feel like LinkedIn is the gift that keeps on giving. So I'm trying to engage a little bit more on that. And there's always great content that I'm consuming from there as well. And if you want to stay in touch with the eWebinar, just go to eWebinar.com. It's spelled exactly as it sounds like, eWebinar.com. Sign up for our newsletter. We push out something once every month with new updates and things like that. We also have a lot of educational webinars on our website, whether it's business related or webinars related, it's all on our blog. And the one big takeaway of all the things you mentioned, which is actually a very, very big question, the one thing that I want people to really take away from this is know that you can run your business without being there 24/7. Like, be confident in that. Like, I know you know that, but be confident in that. Because people that are listening that are online educators, you can only scale your business if you grow it internationally, period. There is no other way. And if you're not confident in the value that you're delivering without actually being there, you're always going to be a slave to your customers. You're always going to want to make that call, think that you're going to have to do that live webinar, think that you're going to have to be there answering every question, otherwise they don't convert. That is absolutely not true. And the moment you understand that, I think the idea of getting closer to the freedom that you started this business for becomes a lot more achievable. And in order to do that, it's not really just as simple as signing up for eWebinar. I mean, I would love for you to sign up for eWebinar. And if you want to, you can do that. We have a free trial on our website. But you have to take the time to learn how to deliver a presentation to get people to where you want to without actually being there. The biggest difference between a live presentation and an automated one is, for a live one, you have the luxury of being able to address things on the fly. And if you forget something, you can say it at the end. But the automated presentation is all about predicting the questions and objections and the needs of your customer to get them to a close. So I have a lot of people that come to me that say, I've launched an eWebinar and I haven't made a sale, so this probably doesn't work for me. But sales, it's a science. It's not that easy, but it is a science and it can be learned. So if you learn how to deliver a presentation to get people's mind to where you want them to end up, and you pair that with a technology like eWebinar, then you have a business that runs on autopilot without you. Then you can repurpose your time towards anything else that you love, the freedom that you want to get to. You can spend more time with your friends, your family, or do nothing, right? Get your time back to do nothing, right? Like I love to do nothing. So that's the one big takeaway is you can do it, be confident about doing it, and also be intentional about learning the skills to get you there. And it's not the technology. Technology is just what helps you. You still have to acquire the knowledge to apply that technology.
Totally spot on. I love that. Well, Melissa Kwan, thank you for sharing your brilliance with us. Folks are going to connect with you on LinkedIn. They're going to pop over to eWebinar.com. All of those links are going to be right below this episode. When people go to thespeakingshow.com, you can connect with Melissa on LinkedIn. You can pop over to eWebinar.com. You can try out the free demo, and it will change your life. It will change your life. It will change your business. And depending on like what time in the middle of the night you might be doing that 15-minute demo that we talked about, you may even get to chat with Melissa herself, which I did because you were up in the middle of the night. I was up in the middle of the night, and we started having this amazing dialogue. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to have you on the podcast. So there you go. Look, you never know what kind of crazy podcasts you might end up on as well. So Melissa, thank you again so much.
Thanks so much, David.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.